What's up, family? It's your man, Mark Black. We gotta have a talk real quick. And before I get into it, I'm going to announce my bias right out the gate. I'm gonna let you know what my bias is so you can account for that when you hear this video, right? Here's my bias. I don't do conspiracy theories. 9 times out of 10, conspiracy theories are way too fucking convoluted when a much simpler explanation for what's actually happening will suffice, right? All of these long drawn out bloodlines and reptilians and all this other crap, it can be all the stuff in the world can be accounted for with two things: greed and self-interest. You can nail pretty much every so-called conspiracy right to the wall and leave it hanging there if you just account for those two things. So I don't do conspiracy theories. So with that in mind, I wanted to come on and address one that I'm seeing a lot in social media, especially in light of the incident that has occurred in Dallas. All right. And that is the idea that somehow or another this incident in Dallas was a false flag operation designed to institute martial law in the United States. All right. So let's look at martial law. And by the way, pay attention because there's going to be a pop quiz at the end of the video. All right. What martial law essentially is the suspension of civilian law and a takeover of the governmental apparatus by the highest ranking military officer. Not the commander in chief, he's a civilian, right? But by the highest ranking military person in the government. Okay, so what happens when martial law is instituted? Well, first of all, habeas corpus, or what we consider a major part of due process, right, is suspended. In other words, if the legal apparatus at that point, right, under the Uniform Code of Military Justice wants to seize you and charge you with something, they don't need a warrant. They don't have to go see a judge. They just pick you up, okay? And of course, the process would then proceed according to the military code, the Uniform Code of Military Justice, right? As rather than going through a civilian court, you'd go through a military court. And instead of being tried, you would be court-martialed, just like a soldier would be, or an airman, or a sailor, or a marine, okay? What else do you miss or lose under martial law? Well, you lose the right to freedom of assembly. The military apparatus that then takes over the government at that point will and can institute curfews and prevent the populace from moving around, from doing what they want to do. And those curfews are strict curfews, right? If you violate a military curfew, you're likely to get shot rather than to, be arrested or picked up. Now, that's not to say they can't arrest you, right? They have military police, and military police act just like regular police. They can arrest you, lock you up, the whole 9 yards, right? But depending on the circumstances, you violate a military curfew, they can announce any violators will be shot. And guess what? You will be shot. They won't even ask questions. You're just dead, all right? So, of course, that means your First Amendment right to freedom of speech is curtailed as well under martial law, because usually we exercise that right in groups, right? We protest, march, and things like that. Okay, and if you don't have the right to free assembly under the Uniform Code of Military Justice or martial law, right, then your freedom of speech is curtailed too as well, right? It's essentially a suspension of the Constitution and an introduction of the law that rules the military, or the Uniform Code of Military Justice. Okay? That is martial law in the United States. Now, here's the pop quiz. Knowing what we know about martial law in this country under the Uniform Code of Military Justice, what the fuck would the average one of us actually lose if they instituted martial law tomorrow? I mean, black people. Let's take a look at what's happening currently under the civilian law and see just exactly what we would be losing if there was martial law instituted, okay? All right. The right to freedom of assembly, right? It's enshrined in the First Amendment of the Constitution, right? Freedom of assembly and to address the government for, peaceable redress and all that other shit, okay? Right now, as we're speaking, police are arresting, detaining, and in some cases abusing Black Lives Matter protesters who are peaceably protesting, who supposedly have that right enshrined under the Constitution, under the civil law, the highest law of the land. They're being persecuted right now for exercising that right. Let's look at the Second Amendment, right? Under the Uniform Code of Military Justice, right, under a martial law system, you don't have a right to bear arms. If the military wants to come and take your guns away, they can do it. Our brother Philando Castillo was carrying a concealed weapon that he was licensed to carry and was murdered for it. And he is not the only one. He is not even the first one. Okay? Let's look at the Fourth Amendment right against illegal search and seizure, right? That right has essentially been eviscerated by the Supreme Court recently that upheld a case out of Utah where a cop saw a guy coming out of a known drug house, right? And used the fact that he had a warrant to be able to stop him and to search him. Now, normally the evidence that was found, the drugs that was found on this guy would have not been allowed in court under the whole fruit of the poison tree doctrine. But the Supreme Court essentially gutted that. So you no longer have a Fourth Amendment right against search and seizure anyway. But under the Uniform Code of Military Justice, right, under martial law, if the military stops you and they search you and they find something they don't want you to have, they're going to take it and maybe take your ass and do whatever. Right? And by the way, cops are right now, as we speak, pulling people over on false pretenses, broken tail lights, failing to signal a lane change, and we're dying. Okay? And I could go on and on and on through all the so-called rights that we have enshrined in the Constitution that are supposed to be for us. So again, I ask you, knowing that martial law will take away all those things and that we supposedly have enshrined in civilian law, under the civil law. Who is it that loses if they institute martial law tomorrow? Other than the pale people? I won't lie to you. In some of our neighborhoods, having the military patrol rather than the police would be an upgrade. A literal upgrade. We'd actually be safer with the military in certain of our communities than we are with the police. That's not even conjecture. That's a literal damned fact. With the institution of curfews where violators are shot on sight and things like that, and we keep a lot of these goddamn crazy ass drug dealers, gangsters, and all that shit down to a minimum. For some of our communities, having martial law in place would be an upgrade. And all of the so-called rights that we supposedly have that are ours under the Constitution are violated against us on the daily. So who is it that loses with the institution of martial law? The pale people that then can't just willy-nilly come over into our communities and victimize us and abuse us? So if we know the only group of people that would actually suffer in any real way under martial law would be them predominantly, why the hell are we carrying water and hewing wood for these conspiracy theory nut jobs. You know who they are. Idiots like David Icke, idiots like Alex Jones, and all of the who, by the way, make millions of dollars off of gullible ass black people who actually believe that the Queen of England, instead of just being some ugly old pale broad, is an actual reptile, right? They make millions of dollars every year off of people who believe in FEMA camps. Which, by the way, FEMA camps, okay, we can address that one too. I'll do it in another video. But even if FEMA camps are real, who is it that is primarily going to be affected by all of a sudden a mass wave of people into these so-called FEMA camps for extermination? They're already exterminating us now. The only ones who would actually have anything to fear from those FEMA camps, again, would be the pale people. The very same people that you swear up and down that you don't trust. The very same people that you swear up and down have given us bogus religion, bogus politics, bogus education. All of a sudden you want to buy into their conspiracy theories about the government and FEMA camps and martial law. Are you mad? So again, I ask the question, take a look at what it is that we're living under now, and you tell me if there's any real substantive, concrete difference between how we're living now as black people and how we'd be living under martial law. Because if you can't answer that with one concrete difference, just one difference, other than the fact that the loss of our rights would actually be out in the open under the military rule, right, under martial law, rather than they pay lip service to our rights but still fucking violate them under the civilian law. If you can't answer me one substantive, concrete thing that we would actually lose, then why the hell are we talking about this? Why would we even care? Why would we even care if martial law was declared tomorrow? What difference would it make? It would not change anything for the most part about how 90% of us black people live. Literally wouldn't change shit. And in some places, we'd actually be safer. Just my 2 cents, family. Just my 2 cents. My informed 2 cents. So if we can, please, can we keep the conspiracy garbage down to a minimum? I'm not saying that rich people don't get together and have babies and that there's bloodlines of rich people from the 17s and the 18s and the 1900s. Fine, we all know that, right? Rich people fuck rich people. That ain't news. And rich people back up rich people. And the motherfuckers that are trying to enslave us all have been doing it forever in the month of Sundays. Europe was built around feudalism. They just exported feudalism to the whole rest of the world. We know this. That's not a goddamn conspiracy. You know what that is? That is history. That is history. It's your man Mark Black. Until the next time, love, peace, prosperity, and power to my people.